Hello and welcome to the third and final webinar on Withy Pit Lane development. Today, myself, Scott Berrient, and Sean Coomber are going to go through the site plan and house types, covering some of the presentation tools available to you as well. If we look at sort of a bit of a summary of what we've actually been looking at in the other webinars, and I know some of you probably looked at the recordings that we've already done already on YouTube. We looked initially at the terrain modelling and the ways we could actually bring in survey data through traditional sort of vector formats, as well as data, XYZ information that can be automatically transferred to a mesh. We also then started to look at the ways in using conceptual modelling at a very early stage allows you to give valuable feedback, so information about areas, calculations, costs, that sort of thing. Sean will go into a bit more detail in this one about how you can actually then look at converting conceptual model information into actual building models, and how you then start to look at the sort of the documentation and that sort of thing. That's controlled by information through what is called zones. And then what it brings through is to a typical house type. And as we've said before, on this particular model, we have 3 different house types, which have been detailed intensively to provide the documentation and the information that goes with it. So what I'm going to do is pass you over to Sean now, who's going to explain a little bit more about the documentation part, some of the extra processes in the ArchiCAD interface. And then we're going to come back and look at some of the presentation area, back into the site model, and then we'll conclude again with the presentation side with the model. So I'll pass you over to Sean.
In the previous webinar, we looked at the individual house types and the different drawing styles that we could take from those individual buildings. So to start with this time, we'll look at creating the documentation from those house types and putting onto drawing sheets and creating drawing issues. So we've got some examples here of where we've created those different drawing types and we've dropped those onto drawing sheets. So we've got things like the floor plans. We're looking at kind of a planning stage floor plan in this case. Also the elevational views. So last time we looked at creating some of the elevations directly from the model, and that's simply dragged and dropped onto the drawing sheets. As well as the actual individual drawings, the drawing sheets include title block information. This title block information is pre-populated by ArchiCAD. Some of that comes from what's called the project information, and that includes information on the name and address of your company and the project. And that's filled in the project info dialog, and that's then filters through onto each relevant page. We've also got auto text that relates to the individual layout sheet. Because this page here is called rear elevation, we've got the name printed at the bottom of the page. It also displays information on the particular house type. Next, we can go across into the production drawings. So here we're looking at the same parts of the model. We're looking at the same floor plan drawings, but we've got extra detail displayed this time to give construction information and IDs for the doors in this particular case, as well as the construction makeup of those external walls. Same for the first floor and the roof space. This time we can see the trusses and the skylights within that drawing as well. Through to the sections, and in this particular section we've got some details that have been taken, which are then displayed on layouts further on. So here we've got some of those construction details. The labels in this particular case link through to the materials, but it's also possible to link directly to clauses from an MBS specification. And just underneath that, we've got the foundation detail as well. Once we've got our drawing sheet set up, we've got our publisher sets. The publisher sets let us create predetermined drawing issues for different purposes. For example, we could have a publisher set to export all of the marketing drawing sheets to PDF. That's displaying basically this group of layouts. We've got a separate publisher set up to export the production drawings to PDF, 3D model to an IFC file if we're coordinating with engineers and so on, production drawings to DWG, and also export the model to BIMX.
Okay, so as Sean had mentioned there, whatever information that you set up in the publication set can get transferred across into what is called BIMX. For those who are not familiar with BIMX, it's basically a mobile application that you can send models and documentation over to the app. It works on Android and iOS. We have a sort of mini iPad here that we're going to show you some examples of the model itself. You can obviously have your clients have the app on their own devices as well, and you can share information to them as well, the model information. You have full control about what information you want to send through. So initially it might be just bring me the model. This one in particular we're going to show you has a lot more sort of documentation. So you'll see here within the BIMX, it lists some files, some file information that's come through previously. We have a renovation project as a sample file that we use for things like trials. This one in particular, we're going to look at the site model a little bit later, but at the bottom here we have the Withy Pit Lane detail view BIMX. So if I just click on that particular one, you'll see that we have the information that was stored or exported from the ArchiCAD file actually in the layout itself. And you'll see here, if I click on any of the points, we have, as Sean showed you in the ArchiCAD file, we've got things like ground floor information. As I say, if I move across the stylized view, so all this is controlled by yourself, how much information is sent across. We then to start look at section information and things like the schedules can be brought across here as well. We can also have different styles of things like sketch options and then right through to the details. So as I say, this is just one of the house types. You could send a model out per house type to the client if you wanted to. If I click on the little option in the bottom left hand corner, what it basically does, it allows us to put the model into the 3D view. So here you're seeing the section information actually with the 3D model. If I click on the option here, I can flip the model across, so you can see I can actually cut it from a different angle, and you can see the information that's brought across there. We can also move the section line backwards and forwards as well, so you can see how easy it is to document and have a look at the model and the documentation in the same context. If I just drop back to the drawing information again, just zoom back out, the same thing happens with things like the floor plan. So if I click on the floor plan, do exactly the same here. So this is the 3D model. What it allows us to do is come into here. I can click on any of the elements. So here we have a series of tables. If I click on the information, what it does, it lists the information. So this is a particular object. This is the width and the size and everything. And obviously then you can start to look at how you schedule the information out. If I drop the man here, what it basically does is just drops me down into the file itself, and I can actually have a move around. So it's a really great way of actually looking at the model in context, and obviously to actually look at your sort of design intent. If I do the information on that one as well, you'll see that it's a door element. It has its height and the width and things like that. So that's a really good way of bringing that information out of ArchiCAD into a mobile app. So I'll just pass you over to Sean, who will talk to you a bit more about the site and how to import that.
Right, so in a previous webinar, we set up the site and we looked at creating the conceptual models and bringing those across into the site. What we're now going to do is replace these conceptual stage models with the detailed design. So we're going to bring across some different house types, the 3-bedroom end terrace that I went through a moment ago, and here's another house type, which is the mid-terrace 2-bedroom house type. And creating a link from those is very simple. We just go to the external content menu, place hot link, browse for the particular file. So we haven't linked any external files into this one yet, so we can create a new module. Browse for the house type. I'll start off with the end terrace. Which stories? In this case, I want to bring across all of the stories. And then we'll select that house type. We can also enter a plot ID within the module. And then we can drop that into the floor plan, and that will bring across the floor plan drawings as well as the 3D model. This part just allows us to line up the stories in case there are different story levels between the two files. Okay, so there's our first house type brought across. And then if we go back into the external content menu, place hot link, we'll bring in the second house type. This time the mid terrace. Again, all of the stories. And we can give that a new master ID for the plot number and place that as a hot link within the file. So we can drag that across to the correct position. We can also mirror that particular house type if it needs to be, or rotate it around and then drag it to the correct position. This can be repeated multiple times to bring across each house type and each iteration of those house types. So that brings us across to the final model, which is where we've now linked in all of those house types into the site plan file. From that point, we can start to extract information from the site plan. So this is a schedule that's been set up to list each of those plot numbers as we've created them, and also display information on those house types. So whether it's the 3-bedroom end terraces or the 2-bedroom units. We can also interrogate more detailed information from the model, such as on the sanitary ware. We can get information on the number of basins and shower cubicles and the dimensions of those. And also start to create our 2D drawings from the entire site. So here we've got an example of a site plan that's been dropped onto a drawing sheet and a site elevation. So again, these are linked directly to the 3D model, and if the model were to update, then these drawings would also update.
Okay, so obviously once that information is all put together and produced, so using the original zones, replacing with hot links, so you can see the zone preview in the top corner. So that could be distributed as the first sort of phase really of the design process. Then you start to pre-populate that with more information. What you can then do is obviously publish out the whole information from the site layout file into BIMX again. So here we have a little preview of the site massing. What we have is the site plan that Sean showed you previously. So this is the information we want to send out. We also have the actual cut line as well. But if I click on the 3D window, you can see in the corner there we now have the whole site. So you can see very easily by just pinching and pushing the information backwards and forwards, you can actually see inside the model itself. We can also hit the little man again. So rather than actually going inside the house type this time, we can go and have a walk around the site. So now you can see that we can start to have a look at everything in sort of context. So this is a really good way of actually, again, communicating, and that information can be distributed across. So